Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Royal Chess. My name is Markoš, and this is my 7th video of my series about Anatoly Karpov and his strategical mastery. In this 7th video we will focus on a very interesting topic, which is the minority attack. Minority attack is on the one hand very typical plan in a Carlsbad structure, but on the other hand it is also, how to say it, more generally a nice example of how we behave when it comes to pawn structures. How can we try to create weaknesses in the camp of the opponent? So this definitely is a very interesting topic, and let us have a look at the game. The game will be Karpov-Kharitonov, and it was played in Moscow in 1988. So let us have a look at the first moves. So Karpov played c4, e6, knight c3, d5, d4. So by a simple transposition, Karpov achieved Queen's Gambit declined, or it could be even accepted if black just took on c4 now, but he didn't. Karpov lately, or in his later years, used the English opening, I mean 1 c4 very often, so this was also the case, but when black showed that he is willing to go into the Carlsbad structure, Karpov was quite happy to change suit and enter a different opening with 3d4, knight f6, and now Karpov took. This might seem as a slight concession on white's side, because now the c8 bishop will be able to get out for free as the e6 pawn disappears. But there are some other advantages on white's side. One of them is that he doesn't have to care for this c4 pawn anymore, so d takes c4 is not the case. And also the structure stabilizes, and this means that that white can try to put his pieces optimally on optimal squares and doesn't need to really take much care about black's plans. So if in some other lines black can go c5, he can take on c4 and has more possibilities, but now after e takes d5 it's much more, black's play, like structurally, is much more restricted. He quite seldom plays c5, as then the d5 pawn is very weak, and usually he plays c6 instead and keeps his pawns like this, which gives white clear plans, and one of these plans is the minority attack, trying to break down this structure. So now white played bishop g5 and black bishop e7, e3, knight bd7, knight f3, and now black played c6. C6 stabilizes the structure. Now white played bishop d3, all this is very well known. Black castled, and white played queen c2. This queen c2 might be a bit scary for black, because it seems like white wants to castle long and then try to attack on the king side. This is quite often being played by more dynamical players, but Karpov is not this kind of a player. So after queen c2, black probably knew that he's not going to castle long. Also, we have to say that there is another possibility for white, which is to put the knight not to f3 but to e2, and then with knight on e2 some central break connected with f3 and e4 is also possible. But Karpov is a classical player, and he simply wanted to play classical chess and try to simply win this game positionally, and he succeeded to do that, as we will see later. Now queen rook e8 was being played, castles, knight f8. As you can see, never bishop takes f6 wins the wins the pawn on h7, because when the knight was on d7 it could retake on f6, and now with knight f8 the h7 pawn is covered again. Now white plays h3 and black plays bishop e6, and yes, and now white's plan is quite simple and connected with the march of the b pawn. White simply wants to take b4, play b4, b5, take on c6, create a weakness on c6, and then just attack it with all his forces, basically. Another interesting plan is to put the knight to c5 with knight a4, knight c5. This is also played quite often. When you play b4, you always have to check whether the weakening of the c4 square is not too important. Usually the c4 square is a very nice outpost for black's knight once the light squared bishops have been exchanged. With the bishops still on the board, white can always take on c4 if some knight comes there, so is more or less safe. Now white played rook fc1. This is quite an interesting move, because it doesn't seem to achieve anything substantial, but I think that Karpov wanted to keep both his plans open. One of them is knight a4, knight c5, and the second one is just to play b4, b5, and like both these plans are quite attractive for white, so I think that that Karpov just wanted to play a move which fits into both these setups. Knight takes d7, bishop f4. This is an interesting moment. It might seem that taking of the bishop on e7 would be a better way to go, as this is the so-called bad bishop and this is the so-called good bishop, but the bishop on f4 is quite strong, and this bishop on e7 is a bit stuck there, so bishop f4 makes a lot of sense. Knight b6. Now black shows that he's prepared to put the knight to c4, which makes the possibility of playing quick b4 less attractive. So white played rook a b1 just in case, just to have the move in case prepared, the b to b4 move. Now black went bishop d6, insisting on exchanging these two bishops, and again Karpov was trying to get most of the position. He went knight e2, so he said, okay, you can take on f4, but I want to place my knight for free with an extra tempo to f4, and putting some extra pressure on the e6 bishop on the d5 in the center when b4 b5 comes. But Karpov played knight g6, and he insists that white should take on d6, which happened, and the position has somewhat simplified as there are no dark squared bishops already, which makes the squares e5 and c5 more vulnerable in black's camp. White would like to put some knight there, but as the knights are still here and the e5 square is quite covered by this g6 knight, there's still a long way to go. And as this knight is still prepared to jump to b4, Karpov decided to play a4 instead and tried first to push away the knight and only then play b4, b5. Rook c8, now Karpov went queen c5. This is also an interesting move, because black could have exchanged the queens, and now the question is what to do. White cannot really take with the rook, because after knight a4 the knight can easily come back to b6, so the plan of Karpov surely was to take with the pawn. Now after knight a4 b3, this knight is lost there, it's too vulnerable, so the knight has to go away somewhere else, for example knight d7, and now white has won a nice central square for his knights, and also has got a clear plan just to push his b pawn all the way to b5. So after queen c5, Kharitonov decided that he wants to keep his queens, and he went queen b8, and white played queen a3, Now you can see that white's heavy pieces are just pressurizing on files A2 and A, B and C, and this is quite unpleasant. White wants to play A4, A5, A6, so black played A6 just to make sure that this will not happen. And Karpov plays rook C3, queen C7, rook B C1, rook A8, knight D2. So now finally white is probably prepared to play B2, B4, as he has played knight D2 and covered the C4 square, so this knight is not going to jump there. And therefore Kharitonov felt that probably he should go A5 and try to stop B4 in this way. And again, many players would try to well, B4 is not possible immediately because the A4 pawn is hanging, so Karpov went rook B1, knight C8, and now he played B4, A takes, queen B4, knight D6. It is a well-known fact that the D6 square is an ideal square for the knight in these structures, because from there it can go to C4, E4, it covers B7, and some coaches use the terminus technicus octopus. When you have such a knight, it resembles an octopus with eight limbs, and yes, this knight gives black quite a lot of confidence in the center of the board, but still it's not enough, because white can make great use of the c5 square and of the e5 square sooner or later. So white went knight b3, bishop c8, and now white went a5, so fighting also for the b6 square and stabilizing his presence on the black squares. Black went knight e7, knight g3, g6. Black would like to maybe to exchange something on the square of f5, so white tried to hinder that, but black played g6. It's also fine to have a luft sometimes when something happens on the queen side, and imagine that there would be some intrusion along the a rank, so it's fine for black to have a space to breathe. Now Karpov played a splendid move. He would like to go with the knight to c5, and in order to do that he needs to cover the a5 pawn, and in order to do that and not to get some b6 and some stuff, he needs to have the a1 rook covered. So he went rook cc1, which is a very nice move. Black wasted the tempo for some activity or seeming activity with h5, rook a1, h4, knight f1, and now it transpires that white is already prepared to jump knight c5. Black went bishop f5, and for the second time in this game white refrains from exchange of the bishops. This time it also has a very good positional reason. This is definitely a bad bishop for black, as all his fixed pawns on the queen side are on white squares, so white decides to let this bishop live and goes bishop e2, and after knight e4 white jumps knight c5, knight c5, queen c5. So another pair of light pieces has been exchanged, and white's advantage has clarified even more. Although this structure, this typical Karpov structure on black side seems to be quite stable, white already has got an undermining move a5, a6, and after that black would be left with a very weak c6 pawn. So now black went bishop e6, knight d2, and again, as many times in his games, Karpov is in no hurry. He simply improves his pieces. Knight f3. The knight checks the h4 pawn. This was a very strange plan for black, because now he has only weakened his position there. without the dark squared bishop it's not very possible to attack along this diagonal. And as white keeps an eye on this pawn, the f5 knight is fixed to the defense of this pawn, and white can slowly improve his position and get a decisive breakthrough into his position. Now black played queen d8, which is a try to free this this f5 knight, which is going to get to d6. But now after queen d8, white can go directly a6, and after b takes a6, rook takes a6, rook takes a6, bishop takes a6, a very typical situation arises. This is how usually it looks like when white was successful in creating his in fulfilling his minority attack. Now black is left with this c6, very weak c6 pawn. More or less this pawn is not defensible, because after, for example, bishop d7, white can go knight d5 and then bishop b7, and sooner or later he will surely be able to take on c6. And therefore Kharitonov, which was probably also in a time trouble, simply went queen a8, but white can still take on c6, takes rook a8, and now after bishop d3 it transpires that white is going to take on f5 as well very soon, and then to take on h4, which would mean that he would get a totally won endgame, being 2 pawns up and with a good knight against a lousy bishop. So basically we can maybe summarize a bit. Let's put there some position with a Karpov structure. Basically white wants to one of the most effective plans for white is the so-called minority attack. White wants to push his pawn all the way to b5, take on c6, and then attack with all his pieces this c6 pawn, which usually sooner or later will fall under pressure. Black's means, there are not so many means for blacks how to fight against this. One of them is to exchange the light squared bishops to play b5 and put the knight to c4. This happens sometimes. Another way is to put the knight to d6. On the d6 the knight transforms into some kind of an octopus and gives black a lot of stability in the center. And then black can also think about playing a6 or a5 at some moments, slowing down white's plan. But generally black cannot only defend passively on the queen side, he should also try to create some play on the king side and to be active and maybe attack a bit the white king, because only by passive defense you cannot get good results in chess. My name is Markoš, and this was my 7th video of the Karpov series on his strategical mastery, and this video was created for 7 seasons. And this video was created for Royal Chess. Have a nice day. Bye bye.